Hello, and welcome to the Masters of Technology Happy Hour, where I have a drink with someone I met during the course of the day, someone I'd like to get to know better. My guest today is Bernard Murphy, who I met at a press lunch at a Design Automation Conference, DAC 2025, held in San Francisco. I was there under false pretenses, a mechanical engineer who knew nothing about semiconductors, which is what DAC is all about. Across from me was Bernard, who, with his PhD in Oxford, decades in the semiconductor business, had every right to be there. We didn't talk much about semiconductors. How could we? It would have been a very one-sided conversation. We talked about writing. He tells me that he loves it. This I've heard from exactly zero engineers. Bernard has written a book about how to write. My curiosity was piqued. So here is Bernard to explain himself.
Intimidated.
How have you been?
Good, good. I've
Uh,
been busy, having a lot of fun with AI and most recently quantum computing.
And I
That
can see
better?
your dog. Is it a German Shepherd or a
Yeah, he's a
Bernard?
German Shepherd, but he's interesting coloring. Uh,
There he
Whoever we
is.
got him from thought he might be. I can't remember. There's a Belgian Malamute.
Illinois. Uh,
So or Malinois, yeah, kind of a cross between those two.
uh,
So, but he's a pretty dog. He was a rescue. We got him. He'd been wandering free in Stockton, perhaps after being, or maybe Merced, after being abandoned by whoever got him first. So he was very, very reactive and touchy and so on. But he's coming around now.
oh, very good. Well,
Yeah.
we have that in common. We have rescue dogs, and one of them is a pug. He was also found in the streets. I forget where. North Bay. We live in the North Bay. So it was, I think it was in the Santa Rosa area.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
Now, Bernard, you are living in Central California, I believe, somewhere, right?
Yeah, we're in the Sierra foothills in Sonora.
Sonora.
So if you know that area, it's like Angels Camp, the Chinese camp, and so on. It's the Gold Rush area.
What made you end up there? I have to ask because you are far removed from not only your origin, but from your, I think your background takes you to Silicon Valley, correct? Or to the,
Yeah. So I
okay.
I worked in Silicon Valley for a long time, and um, I'm sure this is a common story for many people. At one point, I got thoroughly fed up with what I was doing and who I was working for. And so my wife and I decided, why don't we go look for some someplace fun to retire to, someplace we could look forward to moving to full time. Full time. We looked up in the area you are. We thought, the wine country area would be nice, but it was it. I think around Napa is very expensive. And we didn't consider Santa Rosa, which is interesting because her sister lives there. But anyway, for whatever reason, we didn't look at it. We thought about the coast further south than the Bay Area, like
Mhm.
San Luis Obispo.
Yeah.
Nice area, but I didn't like the marine layer, the fog that you get in the morning.
Uh,
And then we thought, okay, let's try the mountains. Talked to a couple of realtors, looked at some stuff, didn't find anything, came back, said, well, that was a fun weekend to get away. And then one of the realtors called us back and said, hey, I think I found something for you. And it's a beautiful, nearly 90-acre ranch that in the mountains that we went out to look at, immediately fell in love with. House was horrible, but we worked on remodeling it. And I was still working in the Bay Area at that time. My wife and I would go out periodically, and at one point she said, "I'm going out there, but I'm not coming back. You can continue to work in the Bay Area if you want." And so I commuted for a while, not every day, but 3 days at a time. I'd go into the Bay Area. That's about a 2.5 hour drive if you do it not at peak traffic hours,
Right.
going over the thing over towards Livermore and Tracy and so on.
Yeah.
Um, that can be horrible at the wrong times of day. I go in Tuesday morning and come back Thursday night and stay in a hotel while I was there. And that
You
worked
have
out
to.
pretty well.
I mean,
Switched to telecommuting.
I moved my wife much against her will. It wasn't quite a kidnapping, but it was just about. And she had such a terrible time moving from her birthplace in Philadelphia to
Oh,
to here, and I showed her all over the Bay Area. I was shopping for houses for a while, and I would show her houses in San Francisco, which was unaffordable at that time. This was
yeah.
back in late 1990s. So we moved out, increasing distance from San Francisco, and I looked at all the communities, starting South Bay, East Bay. I must have looked at North Bay, must have looked at I don't know, 100 houses. And then I showed my wife some of them, the best ones, and she was unimpressed. She was totally unimpressed. She did not want to move, first of all, and then was not impressed by the houses because, as you know, this is like such a high-priced
Yeah,
area,
yeah.
and you get so little for your money and we were at the point where I wouldn't say we're millionaires, but we were able to buy houses in the Philadelphia area that had acres of land, woods,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
stream running through it. And here we
Oh,
come
yeah.
here, and you could buy like a shack, right?
You walk out the back door and the fence is right in front of your face.
I, I didn't understand it, and I thought, okay, so I tried to impress my wife with these sort of, I thought, grand houses in the East Bay, Concord area, Walnut Creek, and she was not impressed. But when I took her to Marin,
Uh-huh.
how well do you know Marin? Probably not at all, right? Nevada?
Not super well, but I've been through Marin and around a little bit on the bay, that
Yeah.
area.
Yeah. I took her through Marin and we ended up in Nevada of all places, just because it happened to be the right distance away from Philadelphia. The value of the property had gone down to where I could beat it with my salary. And
Uh-huh.
we went to Nevada, which I'd never heard of. Nobody has. We walked down the main street, which is Grant Avenue. And then she said, "Okay, I like this place." Like this, this is nice. Finally, finally. She still hasn't. It took her 10 years to forgive me for moving her. Uh,
Wow.
how about yours? Is your wife from the US
Well,
or
she
from
she's
England?
actually a Southern California girl. They were in LA somewhere. She's a structural engineer. I was offered a job in Washington State with Fairchild. And
Hmm.
so we moved up there, and she thought that was wonderful because miles away from the big city. But it wasn't so great for me because I was away from the action. So I wanted to move back to the Bay Area. So we moved to San Jose, and she started working with a wildlife organization doing wildlife rescue, but still didn't really like being there. And so when we moved out to the mountains, we got this huge place, lots of land, and she could set up her own wildlife rescue operation. So
Uh,
then she was really happy.
I was doing a little bit of research in preparation for our conversation, and notice you do something with wildlife now, rescue operations, correct?
Yeah, well, I am on the board of she does all the heavy duty work, but I'm on the
Uh,
board as secretary, and I help her periodically. I'll hold a bird of prey while she does an examination on it, but mostly she does the hard work.
oh, I see. Oh, you specialize in the birds of prey, raptors, and
Well, birds of prey, yeah, raptors, but also squirrels, owls, which are also birds of prey, a variety of things, but mostly small mammals and birds of prey of various kinds, and
I see.
songbirds, but
Okay.
all native.
There must be a fair amount of wildlife out there, I imagine. We are happy to see the occasional varmint that goes across their lawns, but
A fox
so
or something, yeah.
yeah, something like that. We were so excited the other day. We found the camera caught a, bobcat with a squirrel. It had jumped the squirrel.
Uh,
I was a little upset because it was a squirrel I was fond of seeing on top of the fence, and it
uh,
drove the dogs crazy. But I was quite amused by it. But then it ended up in the jaws of this bobcat. I didn't know we had bobcats. But,
yeah, well,
uh,
bobcats have to eat too. The public bring us animals that they've found, animals and birds that are distressed in some way. It could be babies that the mother has been killed, or um, things that have been hit by cars and so on. So we take them in. We've got a fairly big facility on our property, all licensed by the state and the feds. We raise them or rehabilitate them, get them vet help if they need vet help, feed them, get them flying again. We have these big flight cages. They can fly back and forth to build up their muscles again, and then we take them back to where they were found and release them.
this is a mother lode
Wildlife care, yeah, yeah,
wildlife care.
yeah.
Yeah, I think you had already written a book.
The book.
Yeah. You were saying how important it was for people like us, technical people, engineers, to be able to tell stories. And I I've
Right.
I found that quite by accident, but you seem to have made a study of it and have written a book about it.
Yeah, so probably like many engineers, I started out thinking I was God's gift to writing. And so, I had all these cute turns of phrase and ideas and so
Well,
on.
I have to say that may be an English trait because most engineers in this country I've found has a have said writing is of no consequence to us, and we'd rather just skip through all our English classes to get to the real engineering.
Well,
Almost
true.
to say that my language is mathematics, not English.
I shouldn't have classified so broadly, but of the ones that do write,
Right.
they
Okay.
think they're God's gift to writing.
Ah, yes.
And I was in that class.
How does the phrase go? In a land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. So yeah, a lot of people uh, either don't think writing is necessary or they're terrified of writing,
Yeah.
and they're absolutely, you know, freeze up when they required to write something.
Right.
But I thought, I guess, kind of like an engineer. If you're doing something, then there has to be a process to it, and you have to be able to get better at it. But I'm not going to get better at it on my own. I need to work with someone who is already good at this. And so I got an invite from Forbes Books, who, I mean, they're in this to make money. They wanted to help me write a book. And in a lot of cases, what they do is they'll ghost a book for you, but
I
I
see.
didn't want it to be ghosted. I wanted to learn how to become a better writer. So I signed up with them to do precisely that, to write a book. But you don't just write a book and they review it and make a few edits. You go through a very intensive, it's a coaching process where you write something and then your coach kind of tears it apart, and you write it again and he tears it apart again, and on and on and on. And this went on for a year. And I swear there were times that I was thinking, I don't want to do this anymore. This is no fun. And just getting what little belief I have in myself trampled every time we have these meetings. But I hung on in there, and
Because by that time you had already written, correct? You had written short form as they call it now,
yeah,
right? Okay.
blogs, short articles,
Okay.
some white papers, but nothing extending to a book.
Okay.
And so my coach is a English language major from uh, Southern California, somewhere down towards San Diego, I think. And he writes his own books. but he makes money on the side by working with Forbes Books, coaching people like me. And so he got me hooked on the journey. There's this quite famous book written maybe 50 or more years ago, who wrote about most stories having a common theme, which is based on a journey. So if you look at Star Wars or many other film scripts, big hitting film scripts, they're based on this concept of a journey of a hero and someone who advises the hero going through all these steps. He got me into writing in this style. So you write about something that starts out with a really exciting vision, and then you run into problems. And you run into more problems, you overcome those problems, and then you run into a big problem. And somehow, with the help of whoever is there to get you through this, you get through that problem, and there's maybe another problem at the end, and then finally you get to the resolution and some manifestation of the goal you are aiming for. So almost every big story, Lord of the Rings, anything you can think of is written in this kind of pattern. Now, doesn't work very well for short form because you just don't have enough words. Right. So I had to come up with kind of an abbreviated version of that. What's the goal? And then what are the challenges? And then how do you get there? Which is very different from the way I was writing before, because as a technical guy, I would start out with, here's this great technical solution. Let me tell you all about how it works, without any understanding of who cares. So flip that on its head. You start out with who cares, and then you move to, and what are the challenges? And then finally you move to, and here's a possible solution. And that's the pattern I've pretty much followed since then. In everything.
Do you think it's peculiar to, or not unique to, the Silicon Valley, where you have to have the elevator pitch? You only a few moments to attract the attention of a venture capitalist. So you lead with what?
I think that's what people believe it ought to be. But I think they're wrong, especially today when everybody's looking for unicorns. And so in an elevator pitch, telling a VC, here's my great technology and how I build it, doesn't work, even if you can do it in 5 sentences. Because the VC wants to know, how am I going to turn this into $1 billion enterprise? And that means, what problem are you going to solve for a pretty broad range of enterprises or the general public or whatever? And how you get there is kind of a second order problem.
What do you mean by that? Second order problem?
Think about some of these things like Uber. The foundational value of Uber is not the app or anything else behind it. The foundational value is, what new opportunity are you creating? And the new opportunity is essentially a taxi service. So that's not a revolutionary idea, but it reaches a lot of people. So if you can find a better way to deliver it, then you can make a lot of money. And I've talked with a VC who said those are the kinds of ideas that are opportunities hiding in plain sight.
Same thing with Amazon, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not like they invented the store, but they invented a way to engage more people in shop.
I'll give you another great example, NVIDIA. Here is a company whose main business was selling graphics accelerators for gamers. And what they figured out is that the core of that engine, a big matrix engine, would actually turn out to be very useful for AI.
Right.
So they, did a bit of a pivot. They still support the gamers. But they did a bit of a pivot and stripped away a lot of the gaming only type stuff and said, here is an acceleration engine for AI, particularly for the kind of AI that OpenAI and Google and others provide. So now your ChatGPT is running on NVIDIA hardware, not because NVIDIA came up with some revolutionary idea, but they figured out how to repurpose what they already had.
Now that the new Google chip or SoC or semiconductor, Google actually gave NVIDIA a shock, didn't it, in earnings or revenue?
Uh, yeah, I mean, when you're king of the mountain, the only the only way you can move is down.
Yeah, yeah,
So everybody, all the analysts want to see, oh, here's a challenger to NVIDIA, is Google, and now AWS is saying they're going to sell their stuff. I think it's pretty ephemeral, honestly. These companies are not in the chip making business. So, they might make a little bit of money selling their stuff to customers, but I think it's more these days about lock-in, they're never going to make a lot of money selling chips because they're
right,
not chip makers and
right,
they have no background and all the complexities of being in the semiconductor business. It's a tough business. It's cyclical, and you have to stay up with the latest process technologies and TSMC and all that jazz. Those
yeah,
guys are not in that business. They're in the make something for themselves that's perfect for their needs, and maybe try and leverage a little bit to get some lock in with some customers.
right.
But that's part of this whole, cyclical. NVIDIA's investing in these companies and OpenAI. They're all exchanging money with each other, but that's why everyone's worried that this is a bubble because it's no new
Right.
money is being created.
Apple made
Uh,
a series of chips, the M series, and they're up to I think M5 now. But it surprised me that a computer company that knew was not a chip maker, like you say, right? But a computer company is all of a sudden able to come out with a chip that's better than Intel's chips, a bona fide hardcore chip maker, right? All of a sudden they could make a better computer by designing their own chip. Like how did this happen? How did a non-chip maker acquire this sort of expertise and abilities?
well, good question. First of all, it's not that Apple is a non-chip maker. They've
Uh,
been making components of their phones for a long time.
yeah.
But they've gradually expanded the boundaries. But they're vertically integrated. They're still making stuff only for their purposes, only for their phones and their iPads and their watches and things like that. And the what are they called,
Uh-huh.
AirPods.
Right.
So it's still very vertically integrated, designed purely for their purposes. They're not selling those chips to anybody else, and they never will, as
Mm.
far as I can tell, for the same reasons. I mean, they're more purists than AWS and Google are, but they don't want to enable someone else to be as good as them because what they're really selling is the end consumer products.
Sure, sure.
So how did they get there? They acquired design ventures, design companies, or they bought up smaller design companies. AWS did the same thing. Google did the same thing. They buy in talent, design talent to build these chips. And then over time, they do more of this compute. So initially, they'd use Intel chips, and then they start getting rid of the need for the Intel stuff. But that
Mm.
didn't really, I mean, it lost Intel, that one customer, but
Mm.
Intel was still doing fine for a while, selling
Mm.
chips to the PC makers and the big cloud providers and so on.
Mm.
Uh, but I think, over time, Apple started to bring in more stuff. One of the key components in the phones and all of these devices is the modem. So the modem is how you communicate with wireless everywhere else, how you connect to the internet. And they had a real struggle building modems. Modems are very difficult to build, and I think for a long time they were getting their modem from Qualcomm, and I'm not quite sure yet if they've still got off of that, or whether that, if they've built their own modem or they're still depending on Qualcomm for that chip. So I think, it makes total sense. Apple has always had this walled garden philosophy, not just in terms of keeping customers in that garden, but keeping all their own development in that garden. And it's always been consistent. They'll expand within that garden, but not try to go out and sell to other people. It's not just changing with Apple. If you look at, the automakers,
Mm-hmm.
all of the automakers, or at least their tier one suppliers, are now
Mm-hmm.
building their own chips. The communications infrastructure people like Ericsson and Nokia building their own chips. Those are interesting companies because they were in the chip business originally, and then they got out. And they
Mm-hmm.
were just using FPGAs. They programmed their own
Right.
FPGAs. They
As
got back
well,
into chip making again.
Tesla, I think also, or
Tesla makes
yeah.
their own chips. And the reason all of these companies are doing it is differentiation.
Mm-hmm.
They feel the need to be able to build something that is better than everyone else in some respect, not a general purpose computer, but something that's particularly good at communication, or in case of the car makers, in detecting pedestrians are crossing the road, or navigation, the navigation features in your car, all of those kinds of things. They want to be on the leading edge. They don't want to be trailing using standard off-the-shelf products.
The M series chips for Apple had devoted quite a bit of their real estate was devoted to a neural engine, I believe, right? What
Yes.
what can you say about that? Because we have to talk about AI. It's a law. Any conversation between techies has to talk about AI. So let's do it. What part of a chip can be a neural engine? Tell me how that works.
Well, there is an interesting transition going on right now. So let me back up a step.
Okay.
The neural engine is essentially a very small version of what NVIDIA does. So it's a piece of hardware that is really good at doing matrix multiplication. That's
Oh,
fundamentally that's what it is.
okay.
And the reason that's important is if you look at the Chat GPT, or anything else in that class, Perplexity or Claude, or whatever, what they're all doing is this large language model analysis. And large language models basically do let me get a bit geeky here. They do a lot of linear algebra, which means
Hmm.
multiplying matrices together.
Right.
So the core of, if you're going to put hardware into something to accelerate AI, the core of what it has to do is matrix multiplication. The challenge, though, is that if you're doing something that's going to run on a phone, you cannot possibly compete with these mega GPUs and backup storage and everything that exists in the cloud. If you're in AWS or Google Cloud, or any other Microsoft, forget what they call their thing. They all have this giant hardware and disks and memory and so on. You can't replicate that on a phone. It's a tiny thing, and it has to run for a day at least on a battery. The view on phones was that all the phone could do is basically front end. If you wanted to talk to Chat GPT, you could front end on the phone, but then it had to pass the heavy duty work off to the cloud to do
Mhm.
the really hard AI stuff, and then send the results back. And that was kind of the de facto use model that everybody thought was going to happen for phones. But there are problems with that model because, there's a whole list of them. There's latency, or even before that, there's reliability of the phone link you have. If you're driving from here to LA, you for a long time, you're not going through areas that have a lot of cell towers. So you don't have a very good phone connection, or if you're driving through a heavily forested area or a mountainous area, or if you're out in the middle of the ocean on a ship, you don't have cell towers. So how do you get a reasonable connection, number one? And then how do you minimize latency? If you ask ChatGPT a question, do you have to wait 5 or 10 minutes before you get an answer back again? And then what kind of subscription fee do you have to pay for that? Is your communication with this thing going to be private, or can somebody hack it? There's a lot of questions around this. You got to go from the phone to the cloud and back again that worry a lot of people. And so there's been a big push to put more and more of this capability on the phone itself, and only have to go to the cloud occasionally for just a few things that are too heavy to do on the phone. And that's a relatively recent switch, and I think it may be a durable switch.
Do you find yourself worrying about the long-term effects of AI? I'm not talking about, will the robots kill off humanity? I'm talking about all the excessive heat that comes out of these computers and these massive data centers, and it's actually predicted to change the climate of the Earth. First of all, it's going to suck up all the power that we have, and then it's going to change the Earth's climate. Do you lose sleep over this, or is that like
No,
not a
I think
concern?
it's a reasonable concern.
Okay.
And I think, there are already things working on trying to mitigate that problem. So
Uh,
first of all, the stuff on the endpoint, AI on the endpoints, like the
okay.
phones or the AI in your car, that already has to be very power efficient, because you don't have a giant battery in your car. You can't be running down the battery in your car rapidly. But it turns out that if you split AI into two pieces, there's the training and the inference. The
Mhm.
inference, which is what happens in your car or the phone or your watch or whatever it might be,
Right.
that any deployed form of AI is much more power efficient than the training. The training is the big power hog. And that's what's happening in the data centers. And you can already see moves towards dramatically reducing that cost. There's a move to much smaller models. There's so like Llama and GPT. I mean, GPT keeps pushing towards these bigger and bigger models, but I think the idea now is that bigger is not necessarily better anymore in AI, not just
Mhm.
because of power, but also
Right.
because of capability.
Right.
So now you see these much smaller llama models. You have these distilled models that are coming from China that are much smaller, that are basically trained on the big models, but can be trained much more efficiently. So that's one trend. I do believe there's going to be more push towards more intelligent power saving. There's a lot of AI going into how can you reduce the power in the data centers by, intelligently turning things off when they don't need to be on or running at lower speeds. A lot of the techniques that are used today in managing power in your phone, I think more of that's going to be happening in the data center. I think it's still a problem. It's a little blurry because we've got this phenomenon of these major players all building these giant data centers, and everybody getting upset because their home power bills are going up because the data centers are sucking up so much of the power.
Mhm.
And I think that is, I don't know whether that is a blip or whether it's an ongoing problem.
Mhm.
I think along with the, is AI in a bubble question is going to be how many of these giant data centers are actually going to survive, that's
Yeah,
quite unclear to me.
right. Yeah, it's just amazing how big they're getting. And I don't know if it's over. It was just an article in the last year in no, I don't know. You must get this IEEE spectrum,
Yeah, yeah.
right? And I don't know if that's the right issue, but they were talking about a computer. This is IEEE spectrum now, which I place a lot of faith in. They said computers are get up to the size of the Earth. Right? You'll need a computer the size of the Earth soon. That's what mankind is heading towards. Uh, and it's just mind-boggling, isn't it? Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
you know, I there is definitely a trend right now in technical writing. Even
uh,
Spectrum gets sucked into it, which
uh,
is you got to get eyeballs, and the only way you can get eyeballs is make more outrageous claims. And they're not doing it unsupported. They're drawing on opinions from other places. But
sure, sure.
I'm looking forward to the day when the outrageous claims kind of calm down a little and we get back to some form of sanity.
I'm trying to leave the established industry and do my own thing with writing. You did that with semi-wiki. How's that going?
Dan Nenny founded it. I was just an add-on writer, although
Oh,
I
okay.
seem to have become more. My
The editor?
profile has grown within SemiWiki. I'm still doing it as a gig. Dan is the real brains behind SemiWiki. I do it full-time opinion writer. I don't edit anybody else's material. I write my own pieces.
Hmm.
Sometimes um, companies in this space ask me to write about what they're doing, and so that's a kind of pay to play sort of deal. And of course, my own opinion pieces I don't get paid for, but I enjoy
Hmm.
writing them anyway.
You enjoy it? You get pleasure out of it?
I do, I
Yeah.
really do. It's
Yeah.
I can combine the joy of writing and refining and uh, checking that I'm not getting too geeky with the
Yeah.
uh, hopefully the joy of communicating to not non-technical or less technical people about topics that are usually far beyond their grasp, and I want to make them understandable. And then also staying in touch with the technology.
What's the most joyful
Um,
thing about writing specifically?
there's a question of how you determine whether it's successful or not.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
fortunately, in SemiWiki, we get I can look at views on a piece.
How about judgment of your peers? Is that important? Like you find
Well,
people
that
like
I get that more indirectly, but it seems to be quite um, quite effective. So on the views, I can look at what I do is I look at trends. So I do
Mhm.
kind of a waterfall graph,
Mhm.
and I what I continue to try to do is keep pushing the views up by what I do. If I do an opinion piece or a technical piece or whatever, I'm trying to change the mix to keep pushing the views up. So that's one thing. The popularity I get through, to some extent, LinkedIn. I can look at views on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a very small number of views, but the trends are interesting. Um, and also invitations to moderate panels. So I potentially got one coming up next year, early next year. And then just what people tell me is, hey, I read everything you write, or I love
Oh,
the way you
yeah.
write. So could you write about
Uh,
this? There's not a lot of comment feedback. I find that it might be that PhD from Oxford thing again. You know, people. I think people might be afraid to comment. I hope not, and a few do comment, but I think, if you're talking about quantum computing, how many people know much about quantum computing? Not
yeah.
many.
Right.
There's a trend away from the comment section being a useful place to go. If you look at the comment sections in the Wall Street Journal or
Or New
Washington
York
Post or
Times.
whatever,
Hmm.
it's all, submerged third type stuff. People who just want to rant, and I think most people have lost interest in that.
By the way, your dog, what's his name?
This is Ryder. Oh, he
Yes,
left. Yeah.
he's lost interest in our conversation. So I'll let you go. You probably have better things to do than talk to me. But I wanted to ask you one thing. I promised my wife I would never do this, but I can't resist. What movie star do people say you look the most?
I think somebody said something about that a long, long time ago, and I don't remember. I have no idea who I look like.
Do you know
Yeah.
Max von Sydow?
Oh, okay. That's an interesting comparison. Not an unflattering one either.
Well, that's okay. Thank you. Good. I'm glad I got away with that
Yeah.
one. Oh,
Yeah,
very
he's
good.
quite a guy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He's one of my favorites. And what I my favorite movie with him actually. I'll end it with this before. I'm sure you don't want to hear me blabbing. 3 Days on the Condor. Have you ever seen that?
Oh, it rings a bell.
Yeah.
Rings.
You should watch it. Tell me if
Yeah.
I'm Tell me if you see any resemblance.
Three Heads of the Condor. Okay. Yeah.
Next time I see you, I hope to have the book with you, and I hope you'll sign it for me.
I'm not going to DAC
Yeah.
next year. That's in Long Beach, I think. But the
It's
following year, I think it's in San Jose.
yeah.
Some of these
Yeah.
guys are moving away from working with outfits like SemiWiki just because they're trying a new spin on how they do their outreach.
Hmm. Interesting that you say that. I've noticed that in my case too.
Yeah.
I'm trying not to take it personally. I'm sure
Yeah. Yeah, it's not personal. I think there's a trend to, what do they call it? Earned content, which means they don't have to pay for it. They can get it picked up by magazines or journals or whatever
yeah.
that will do it for free because they're making their money on advertising or something.
Right.
Yeah.
And for a long time, there's been this disturbing trend to self-publish. Like these companies think that maybe because of the failing of industry media, that they choose to create their own content. And I often thought, it's like writing. It's like, really, or chip making. Do you really think you're going to be a good chip maker when you're not in the business? Do you really think you're going to be able to publish because you're just a company that wants to cover their products? And I don't think they're doing well at it, but it has been a trend that they just publish
Yeah.
their own
I
stories
think
and
it's a
put them on their
cycle.
website.
They'll
Uh-huh.
figure out eventually that they're really not very good at it, and then they'll swing back.
Yeah. And leave it in the hands of us pros. I hope so, because I mean, honestly, who believes anything that's written on somebody's website? It's like holding a baby up and saying, "Isn't my baby pretty?" Right? It's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
you
Well,
can't do that.
it's the mood of the times, when your leadership is unimpressed by expertise in anything and is more motivated by gut feel, then everybody else maybe moves along with that a little bit, and eventually they'll figure out, oh, there is a reason we have experts. But
Uh,
until that fever passes, we're maybe stuck with this.
right. Oh,
Yeah,
yes. Now I'm going to stop before we get ourselves into trouble and talk about
yeah,
the
yeah.
administration. You,
Yeah.
you never know who's listening.
Yeah,
Bernard,
you
it's
never know who's listening. Right, right.
Yeah, Bernard, it's been great, very enjoyable. I'm glad I got to know you better. You
Uh,
have a good rest of the day and keep
yeah,
putting
thanks for the
these.
opportunity, Rabindra, and
Yeah,
I'm sure we'll meet again.
very good. I hope so. All right. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.
And that concludes this episode of the Masters of Technology Happy Hour. I hope you enjoyed our chat and will join me as we talk to some of the most interesting people in the design and engineering software community.